Does your podcast need a hygienist? Listen up. Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. Today on the program, I'd like to talk about hygiene. That's not necessarily true. Here's the deal. I just got back from the dental hygienist. I'm not a big fan of going to the dentist, but I've learned that the best way to keep me away from going to the dentist is going to see the dental hygienist at least once every 6 months. And of course, I got glowing reviews. She's wonderful, and she said I'm fine, and my teeth look great, and I'm doing all the things I want to do. But I still go back, and I get this all the time, because I don't think I've had a cavity in, golly, a very, very long time. So that's good news. That's good news. But it got me to thinking, the reason you go to the dental hygienist, the reason you go is so that you make sure that nothing bad is happening, because you can't tell. They're your teeth. They're the things that are inside of your head. There's some parallels for podcasting. It has nothing to do with teeth in just a moment. But it does have to do with having an expert, having the value of having someone whose only job is to see how things are going in a place where it's notoriously hard to see how things are going, if all that makes sense. Kind of like, earlier last week I met with a financial planner. No, not because I'm fabulously wealthy, but because I just need to do some things like that. It's good to have a regular checkup of one's finances, especially as one is over a half a century old. It's definitely an important thing. And the same thing, you go see your doctor or someone every so often to do checkups. Maybe there's a value here in podcasting as well. Even for someone like me, because I got to figure dentists need the same kind of treatment. Yet dentists look at teeth all day long, every single day, and I'm sure that they find plenty of times when they need to do something with their own self, but it's hard to look and examine your own teeth. Financial advisors likely have their own financial person looking over their stuff. Doctors probably go to checkups for the doctors. Hey, podcaster, you out there, the working podcaster, when's the last time you had someone else check up on what you're doing? What would that look like? I have to wonder as we do that. Now, I have a client who about every 6 months reaches out to me to do this very thing. Hey, can I just check to see if things are going right? And I don't normally do this. I have a single client that I will do this for because it's not what my business is all about. But I don't know, maybe it should be. Maybe there's not only a play here for me, but anybody who wants to play this. Maybe just the idea of having someone else knowledgeable in the topic, someone who is keeping up with the latest changes. And as you've heard many a time on this program, man, are there a lot of changes happening in the podcasting space right now. Maybe it's worthwhile to have someone take a look to make sure you're doing clean things. So I do this for one of my clients right now. My job is to go through and look at what he is doing for his show to make sure he's doing things properly. Because again, things change a whole heck of a lot. So what I thought we would do on the program today is I'm just going to walk you through the things that I do. Because maybe this is worthwhile for you to do on your own, although I highly recommend getting somebody else to do it. So if you want to grab a pen and paper, I guess you can kind of write these general thoughts down. I don't have any notes with this. I'm just going to tell you the basic things that I do, and maybe you and one of your other buddies who's a podcaster, maybe together you can swap and exchange these things. So the couple of things that I look at, it's really three things I'm looking at. I'm looking at the media files themselves. I'm looking at the RSS feed, and I'm looking at the website. Those are the primary three things I'm looking at when I'm doing a checkup. So the media files, it's really a two-part check, more than that, but a two-part check, if you will. One is the content, and does it sound good? And of course, I go a little bit deeper into that, not just does it sound good. Actually, I'm checking the volume. I'm checking to make sure that the LUFs are somewhat standardized. There's not a huge amount of dynamic range inside. I'm making sure there's not any weirdness where you got like too long of music or too short of music or too abrupt edits and those sorts of things. But that's much more subjective than it's objective, obviously. So I'm looking at the overall quality, what somebody might experience when it goes into their head. Can't do too much about the overall contents itself because maybe it's not a show just for me. So that's not what I'm there for. I'm just making sure they're not making any obvious errors, any big things that need to actually modify and move. Once I've listened, then I do a technical spec. And this is a lot deeper, and I'm sorry I don't have time to list out all the things I'm checking for, but I'm checking to make sure that they've got a consistent bit rate and that they've got good, the sample rate is working out well, that they've tagged things properly, all the technical aspects that go into a media file. Do they have the right size episode, which is a big problem, episode artwork, all sorts of those things. So I did a technical check of the media file itself. Then when I go check out their RSS feed, that's also a multiple part check. One, I make sure the feed actually validates itself. Are they using all things properly? Are they using the right tags? Are they using things in the correct format? Those sorts of things. But then I spend a lot of time looking at their hosting provider, that which generates that RSS feed, and find out, are they taking full advantage of what the hosting provider provides? And then I do a little historical looking at that too. I look back at their last 15, 20 episodes and find out, are they scheduling episodes to publish on a consistent basis? That has a lot to do with listeners and the expectations that they set. Are they using a consistent naming? Are they all over the place? Are there spaces where there shouldn't be and colons and weirdness like that? Just again, for a consistent, clean experience. As much as I'm looking to make sure that they've actually followed the rules with no numbers in your episode titles, and those sorts of challenges that are around. And the third thing I'm looking at is back at their website. And here, and I've talked about this at length on this particular show, when I'm looking at their website, it's really from the point of view of a brand new person, because the website is where you're probably going to get most people will discover your podcast through a web page before they're going to discover it somewhere else. Even if it's word of mouth, somebody says, hey, check out the podcast. Their chances are they're going to search for your podcast in just regular Google. So I was looking there to find out, how does this podcast page look to a brand new person? Are they using the proper terminology for things like Apple Podcasts instead of iTunes? Or is there a link where people can listen in Spotify, which is growing? Are they in Google Podcasts? All those sorts of little challenges. Is it easy? Is a good listener experience taking place? Those are the kind of the things that I do. And of course, you can do that on your own. You can say, hey, I got a little checklist here. Am I doing all these various things? But here's the reality, and the reason why I think maybe a podcast hygienist is not a bad idea is things change. And if you're not as on top of this stuff as I tend to be, or I try to be, a lot of things can happen in 6 months, and especially in 2019 and going into 2020. What does 6 months of change mean there? Wow. So I think a really good idea is to find someone who is keeping up with things and ask them every so often to go in and take a look-see at your site. Now, I mentioned earlier that is not my primary business. However, I'm interested in the concept. So if you're a business, if you run a podcast for a business and you're thinking, maybe it's a good idea to do that, let me know. I would be happy to take what I'm doing now for my one special client and maybe make this into a service offering for other people. It's valuable information. It's smart. It's intelligent. So why not do it? So if you want to think about that, if you want to reach out to me, get in touch. evo@podcastlaunch.pro. You can go to podcastlaunch.pro to get a list of all the services I offer to my clients. And I shall be back tomorrow with yet another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers!